Hello, Chris.
Hi, everybody. Hi, Chris. Thanks, everybody, for joining us today. We're going to explore the Douro River. I've got Richard here with AmaWaterways, and it should be a really good presentation. And I know some people might be thinking, why am I doing all of these webinars right now? And it's because people are actually booking a lot of travel for 21 and into 22. So now is the time to be planning ahead. We may not be able to travel right now, but it's the time to start looking forward to when we can. And so from there, I'm going to hand it over to Richard.
Very good. Thank you so much, Becky, for that introduction and for another opportunity to be able to share a little bit about one of the destinations that AmaWaterways travels to. Thanks again for time with your guest, of course, as well. But today, we're actually going to be talking about the Douro River. And this is another amazing itinerary that we offer at AmaWaterways. So popular, in fact, that just 2 years ago, we added a second ship, the Douro. Along with our AmaVita now, we have two ships operating here. And we actually have two itineraries that we operate as well. One of them operates round trip from Porto, Portugal. And the other one actually operates between Porto going all the way over to Vega Spain. So two different itineraries to choose from. And what's nice with every AmaWaterways cruise is that guests always have the option to do a cruise only, which are typically 7 days, or they can add a pre or post option to that, which I would certainly recommend if you have that opportunity. One of the really nice things with the pre and post packages is that our cruise managers join the guests before and after the trip. So they're there to act as your personal guide. They're there to make recommendations, suggestions, some tips, everything from just, where's the local ATM to a great little cafe that you might want a suggestion on. And in addition to that, they're leading some different excursions while you're in town before you board the trip. And the other part that makes it extra nice is that by the time you get on board the ship, you've already really kind of formed that relationship and that rapport is already there. And then if you're staying afterwards, they'll join you for that as well. But like I said, today we're going to be talking about the Douro River, and the itinerary that I'm going to be featuring today, just to kind of go over and really just touching upon the highlights. We could spend probably a few hours easily really getting into all the different details of every itinerary. But this one is called Flavors of Portugal and Spain. Flavors of Portugal and Spain. And this is going to be the map that we're looking at right here. So this particular one offers a pre or post option, depending which direction you're traveling. Today we're going to be starting in Lisbon, where you get an opportunity to stay 3 additional nights there. We'll talk about what some of those highlights include before you make your way to Porto, and then board there, making it all the way over to Vega Spain, where you'll disembark in Spain, and then you have some time to make a stop in some other wonderful towns, and then ultimately ending in Madrid. So beginning with this one again, Flavors of Portugal, this one actually begins when you arrive, of course, into Lisbon with this particular one. And Lisbon is just an amazing town, kind of spans over several of the different hills in the area located on the Tigris River, not actually on the Douro River. It's a little bit further south. Portugal is kind of a little bit long, if you will, from top to bottom. And so we start there, and then we're going to lead you, once you get there on day one, again, if you're doing the pre, somebody's going to be there from AmaWaterways to meet you. They'll take you over to the hotel where you'll get to meet the cruise manager. That first evening is going to be leisurely on your own. And then the next day is when we'll actually begin some of the different options. Some of the different options that we see on this next slide right here are going to be the City of Seven Hills tour, the Cintra excursion with Matias Palace visit. And then ultimately, when we end our time there, we're going to do a motor coach transfer over to Porto. Along the way, we're going to make a stop at the Tomar Castle before actually getting into Porto before we board the ship that evening. But the Seven Hills tour is one of the stops that we're going to be doing the next day on our excursion with the cruise manager. This is actually the town of Alfama that we're looking at right here. So get some time to explore there, just kind of learn some of the history. A really big thing, not just with Ama, really in any trip that you go on, is to really kind of take in the local culture. So one thing that we always look to do is to take you to these places where the local residents are going to go, from the cafes to the restaurants to just things that they like to experience. If it's a wine tasting that we're going to be doing, all those are the things that we look to incorporate, in addition to some things that might just be exclusive entirely for the AMA guest. One thing that I'll mention here also, and this is when we're on the cruise, but every day that we're on the cruise, there's going to be a minimum of about 4, even upwards of 5 different tours to choose from that are going to be included for you. There's a very, very, very small amount that you might have to pay something additional for. So if you're looking at all the different rivers that we operate on, majority each day, you'll have complimentary shore tours. So on the Seven of Hills tour that we're going to be doing here, we'll spend some time down in this lower area. Then we'll actually make our way all the way up to the Castle of St. George, which we see at the top right there, built back in the 6th century. We get to also take in some amazing views of the town. And then you'll kind of have some evening time at leisure also. And the next day, we have an option. Now we're on day 3, where we'll be able to make our way over to the Palace that we see right here, the Royal Cintra Excursion. This actually was the former summer residence of Portugal's royal family. And just the views up here are amazing, just located up on the mountain, very picturesque. So we get to spend some time there, and then again, just take in some of the local flavors. And we always give our guests some ample time. You know, that's the goal. Becky, of course, knows this. She's heard me share a number of this before, but depending on how many things there are to see in a certain location, we're going to make sure we take in the core highlights and then allow some free time after that. So in one particular location, if there's a lot to see, chances are we're going to be there all day, maybe even late into the evening. If there's not a lot to see, but there's still something worth stopping to take in, we're going to do that, still allow some free time before we move on also. So day 3 then, we make our way into day 4. So this is actually now where we're going to do some additional tours before we make our way over to into Porto. So on the way to Porto, we're going to do this City of Bridges tour. So on the way down there, we make a stop in a town called Tamar. We actually get to visit one of the castles of the Knights Templars. If you're familiar with any of those stories, some of the stories that go back to the Christian Crusades, we're going to make a stop at a really beautiful castle there up on top of a hill as well. Going to spend some time taking in some of the local cuisine as well. You have options with local walking tours or some motor coach tours. And then once we actually get onto the ship, along the way, we'll actually have some time to incorporate some different cycling tours as well. So one of the things that I think most people know, and if you're into wines at all too, you know, there's a number of different varietals of port wines that Portugal is famous for. So as we sail through the Douro Valley, this is going to be a big part of the different wines that we get to experience. And throughout any cruise that we do with AmaWaterways, we always take in the local wines. So if we're in Germany, we'll be tasting a number of the white Riesling wines. If we're in Bordeaux, of course, we're going to be tasting those wonderful red wines. When we're in Portugal, of course, it's going to majority be about the port wines that they're serving there also. So the port wines, you know, these are actually fortified wines that have a distilled spirit, typically brandy. They're normally a little bit on the sweeter side, some of the sweeter red wines, but they also have some dry, some semi-dry, and then a number of different options of some white wines also. So throughout this entire trip, we're going to be doing some wine tastings while we're in land, but on board the ship as well, we'll have some different wines that are always going to be regional to those different stops that we're making. And then on day 6, we'll actually make our way through Entre os Rios. This is actually translated would mean between the rivers. So we get to pass this beautiful area this day, going under some different bridges. We're going to pass a number of steep hillside vineyards on either side, some really small, cute little towns along the way. One thing that's unique about the Douro River, though, unlike some of the other rivers, is that, you know, one, it's not quite as long. It's actually about 560 miles long, which is still quite long, but even in terms of even things like locks from on this particular itinerary, since we go all the way through the Douro River, we'll go through about 5 locks. Comparing that to the Danube, where it's maybe about 16 locks, or the Rhine River, where it's about 10 locks. But we're going to experience some really wonderful things along the way. But what's different here is that there's not a lot of really big towns that are built on directly on the river. They're going to be smaller towns, and in most instances, we'll dock there, and then we'll lead away to some excursions that are going to be a little bit further into the interior. Something that we're going to be able to experience also are called the quintas. And the quintas are actually these family-owned estates that dated back a number of centuries. And one of the things that they used to do is that they would actually be able to rent the land for 1/5 of what was produced on the land. And That doesn't happen anymore, but based on the fact that it's 1/5, in Latin, of course, that would be 5. So that's kind of where they, or quinta would be 5. So that's kind of where they have these names. So we get to stop at some of these different places, do some different wine tastings, taste, again, some of the homemade things that they're making for us as well. So we'll continue on. The next stop then will be Regua, Portugal, where we get a chance to do Amago City tour and Boalas tasting. Boalas, if you've never heard of that, these are actually some donuts that that are Portuguese donuts that they cut in half. They fill them with this really wonderful like creamy custard. So again, tasting some of the local cuisine is always a really big part of any trip. So we'll get to experience that as well. This right here is another opportunity. This is the in Lamego with some the Bolas wine taste, or the Bolas tasting that I mentioned also. This that we're looking at right in front of us is actually the forgive me, I'm trying to recall the exact name, Lady of Remedies Cathedral. And the steps to go all the way up this, all the way up to the very top are approximately 686 steps. So if this is a bit too active for you, this is of course an option. Every stop where we include the shore excursions, by no means do guests have to do this. This is why we give a choice to do some different things. So maybe if you want to do a cycling tour, if you just want to head around in town, if you've been here before and do your own thing, those of course are always some options. But if you're adventurous enough to go all the way to the top, this is pretty much what you would be rewarded with, in addition to all the amazing views looking back out onto the town. Here's another place that we're going to be stopping at as well as an option, the Matias Palace, or Casa de Matias. And I forget exactly how far this one goes back. Not quite as old as some of the other ones. I want to say maybe to the late 17th century when it was built. But it's composed of 3 different buildings: the manor, the wine cellar, and then the chapel too. So we'll be able to make a visit here, visit some of the different areas, do a wine tasting, and then we'll also allow some free time to also walk around the grounds and just kind of take in the scenery. And then next along the way, already up to day 8. I'm sorry, Becky, did you have a question?
Yeah.
Oh, sorry. The next place then, I know we're already on to day 8 here, is into Pinhão, Portugal, where again, we'll be able to stop at another quinta to do some wine tasting. There's a wonderful hike up to the old Pinhão train station that we get to do. And then another quinta that we get to stop at as well, and it's a free time in the evening. But here's just one picture that I wanted to include that we'll be able to do the next day up to the Pinhão train station. Wonderfully decorated. There's these 25 tiles that you get to spend some time walking around. We're going to have a guided tour here, but it really kind of marks the history of the upper Douro Valley area that we're passing through. And so we get to have our guide that kind of walks us through that as well. Going to get some free time to again, just kind of spend there also. The next day, we get to have another wonderful lunch at another quinta, the Abasada, also kind of up there in the same Douro region, of course. And then finally, we're going to make our way all the way over to Vega Spain. So this is where we'll actually disembark on the cruise, but again, some free time to go around, visit the Old Town area where there's some wonderful cafes, stop at some great restaurants. And again, this of course is where your cruise manager is going to be with you to really point out some different things along the way, make those recommendations. A lot of history in here that, to really enjoy as well too. Some great architecture. Some of the places where you're going to have some free time. One thing that I always like to suggest is make some reservations in advance. If there's maybe a wonderful restaurant that you want to get dining arrangements at, maybe there's some museums that you want to take in, maybe 6 weeks to 8 weeks in advance would really be recommended, especially if you're traveling at peak time, because some things can really fill up. The other part that I'll just mention also is, there's all the different seasons that we travel. There's never really a bad time of when to travel. For the Douro River, I would say fall, might be a really good time. You're going to still catch some of that fall foliage time, but really any other time throughout the year is a wonderful time to travel. If we travel at different seasons, every season just offers a different perspective and something really beautiful. But in the off-season times, like fall or maybe May, kind of even getting into the early part of June, some less crowds in town, which is also something that's kind of attractive. One of the other options that we'll get here is Castello Rodrigo tour with a tasting of the regional some local regional cuisine there as well. We get to take a hike up to this old medieval castle, just some wonderful ruins to take in. Again, just a little medieval town. Probably won't spend a full day here, but again, just some time to kind of take in some of the local area too. So we're literally seeing everything along the Douro River with this particular itinerary. And then again, ultimately ending here in Vega, Spain. And then we're actually going to transfer all the way. So we're going to get off the boat right here also. We're going to make our way all the way over to Madrid, but we're going to spend a full day in Salamanca. This is actually the Royal Palace right here. So this is where the Spanish Royal Palace, royal family actually still resides. And we'll, again, spend the full day here. We'll do a tour throughout the area. Again, some other wonderful cafes and restaurants to choose from, some great galleries to take in, some wonderful parks, just different monuments, different sculptures to have a look at. So definitely encourage you to, after those tours, to really spend some time in exploring, get lost in the area. And then day 11, again, we'll get some more free time here before we ultimately end on day 12. And then basically it's going to be traveling home at this time. So I know we moved through that a bit quicker, but it's, just want to really kind of touch upon some of those highlights. And Becky, I don't know if you might have any questions or anything you might want to pause on and go back a little bit. I want to share some of the ship features as well, talk a little bit about that. But in terms of the itinerary, I don't know if you might have anything you'd like to add.
Although I think that the pre and post editions are wonderful. Some people might not have that much time, so you definitely can do, the shorter, just the river cruise part of it. But if you have the time, I definitely recommend the pre and post. Just wanted to make sure they realize that. And also the hosts being able to, I'm not saying the right word, Richard, help me. The cruise,
Manager, right?
yes, thank you. It escaped me. The cruise managers are just invaluable on those pre and post extensions as well.
They really are. They really are. And just to emphasize a bit more, I'm actually going to flip to the next slide here too. And I'm so sorry. So we actually get to make a stop in Toledo. I'm really sorry that I didn't even talk about this one because this one ends on day 14. So Toledo, we get to make a stop here as well before ultimately ending. And this is a day trip from Madrid before we make our way back to Madrid and farewell flights back home. So I'm so sorry that I neglected to share that. But I want to share just a little bit about the ships also and talk a little bit about the ship life. Again, I mentioned we have two different ships, the Amaduro and the Amavita. The Amaduro was the newest one that we introduced just about 2 years ago, actually back in 2018. And the Amavita that's been operating for a while. These ships are a bit more intimate, even more intimate than some of the other ships that we have in other parts of the doing the Danube or the Rhine, or even some of the ones that are operating in France. Maximum capacity for either of these ships is 102 guests. I will also mention with that statement that going forward, when we're able to actually officially go back on the waters, there is a maximum mandate that's been put in place for river cruising of no more than 100 guests. So at no time will we have more than 100 guests on board, which I think everybody would feel good in terms of social distancing. The other part that I'll mention related to the shore tours that we're taking also, what's nice about those is that everyone has these AudioVox headphones that they get to charge in the room each day. And they just pick them up the next day after they've been charging and head out and join the different tour that they want to go on. But the nice thing with them is that you don't have to be right next to the tour guide. You can be 50 plus feet away, still listening to what they're saying, taking some photos, but especially in today's world and everything happening right now, feel that you're getting that nice safe distance. The other thing that we've done actually on board one of our ships that have actually started sailing already in Europe, it is, however, for German guests exclusively, so it's sailing in German waters, is our Ama Christina. We put up some plexiglass in certain areas. The crew, of course, they're all wearing their masks. If anybody's actually been able to step out into restaurants when they were open, or think some might still be open, it's wear your mask whenever you're kind of walking throughout the area, but once you're sitting down, you can take off your masks. So it's kind of the same thing on board that we've adapted, as you're kind of walking around the ship, you have your mask on, but when you're sitting in the lounge, of course, when you're sitting at the dining area, you're free to take your mask off. The response has been really positive. You can imagine how excited our crew was to actually get back on the waters. So we're We're going to learn a lot more, though. We know that this is just kind of an early first step. I'm proud to say that we are the first American river cruise line to do any sort of sailing back in Europe. There are some other European cruise lines that have started sailing as early as June 1st. And just based on our relationship with them, we were able to get a lot of information from them and things that we could look at to incorporate into our ships. But in terms of just kind of what is ship life on board, if you look at the top left picture right here, this is a look at what one of our lounges would look like. And it's the main gathering place of the ship. It's where all the guests are going to kind of go to hang out, to socialize, to meet up with one another, and you just kind of share your day's experience, but really just kind of take in some of those wonderful views also. It's going to be located at the front of the ship. You get these beautiful floor-to-ceiling windows, and again, just great for scenery. But it's also that place where, in the evening, the cruise manager is going to come up here, give some information and give some highlights on what the next day stops are going to look at, what those shore excursions are going to be. We're going to bring on some local entertainment, anywhere from a local pianist who's playing some beautiful music and taking requests to a full-blown disco in the evening. Or on certain nights, we may bring on some local entertainment where it may be some Spanish dancers coming on board. And, that's where we get to, again, really take in the local culture. The staterooms that we look at down on the left, we got some beautiful appointed staterooms. Some of them in our lower categories will be what we call our fixed window staterooms. Still wonderful, cabins with some nice space. But the majority of folks will book into one of our twin balcony staterooms, which would actually give our guests the opportunity to have a French balcony, as well as a full step-out balcony from the same axis of their room. And the nice thing, if you consider the time of year that you're traveling, the weather time that what the weather might be like, it gives you the best of both options. So if it's going to be really warm, certainly you can stay inside the comfort of your room with the temperature that you're setting to that comfort level there. But with the French balcony, the windows are pressed all the way up against the railing, so you get wonderful views. And then, of course, the full step-out balcony, step outside, enjoy a glass of wine in the evening. We've also got some wonderful suites as well that have a separate suite area too. So a number of great options to choose from. We've got pools on the majority of all of our vessels as well. There's a lounge that I mentioned. The restaurant, the dining is a great experience too. In addition to the main dining room, we also have what we call our chef's table restaurant, which is an alternative dining option. There's no additional charge for that. It is included. But it's a great way to experience this wonderful 6-course meal. And within each of those courses, you still get a choice. So it's not just a set 6-course meal. There's 3 to 4 different wine pairings with it. The chef's station is set up so that there's this glass window in front, so you can see him and his team preparing all the meals. They're plating the foods and bringing it out. And it really is my favorite experience on board the ship when we're sailing. So those are some different options for you, just kind of what to expect while you're on board. Just kind of finishing some things up here. We've always got different promotions in place. Here's a look at a beautiful picture. This actually happens to be Bratislava that we're looking at right here, that fortress atop, which kind of looks like an upside down table. But the promotion is actually fly free to Europe in 2021 on a number of select departures. Also some limited air with business class upgrades on certain departures. Separate from this, we've also got what we call our cruise spotlight. Those are continually changing, but there's a number of select dates there also that could possibly be combined with this. Not in every instance, but you could receive additional savings, just up to $1,000 per person, potentially some onboard credits or even some category upgrades there. And as Becky mentioned before, there are actually a lot of people that are booking for next year. We understand some people are still just, they feel safe about waiting for this year, but they're excited, they want to dream about travel. So they already started making reservations as far as into next year and even 2022, because our 2022 season has been open since May. So that's an option as well. If anybody's interested in booking, you can check with Becky. She knows that if anybody's listened to this presentation, and if you book within 3 weeks, you'll receive an additional $100 savings. That's combinable with any one of these other offers that's applicable as well too. And we also want to include a save the date, just in interest of kind of keeping this momentum going. The main reason that we're doing this is to just kind of keep that dream alive. One, it's something nice to look at, to see some beautiful pictures, to talk about travel, to think about the wonderful, dining experiences that you're going to be able to have in some of these exotic places. So new to our portfolio of destinations is Egypt, that we're bringing back beginning September of next year. I can tell you, hands down, this is the most popular requested itinerary right now since it's been introduced. In fact, the majority of our September and October sailings for next year are already filled. So if you're flexible, you're thinking of going around that time, check with us and maybe we can find something in there for you. September, May would be the two most popular times in terms of weather, I should say. But there's some other great times to go also, just whatever works for your schedule. But we'll have with us Todd Ney. He's actually a product manager of Egypt. I've done a number of presentations with him. Great guy, but he knows the product. He's experienced this destination. He's been there a number of times, and he'll be just kind of our expert guide as he walks us through a presentation on Egypt and the Nile River. And with that, I will turn it back to you just momentarily, Becky, if there's anything you might want to add to that also.
Yeah, I'm really excited about the Egypt. I was able to sit in on a presentation that Todd did, and it's absolutely amazing the itinerary that Ama has put together and the places that you're going to get to go that other people aren't going to get to go. So be sure to tune in for that one because it's going to be wonderful. I think also, you know, now's a good time to talk to your friends as well. Speaking of the Porto wines, but even in France and other regions of Europe, if you belong to a wine club or something, talk to them, see if maybe a group, if you want to go, give me a call. There's discounts for groups going. So it's a good time to be planning for that future. And I'm kind of saying something and I don't know much. So, but it came to mind, the Floriade is in 2022, which is a wonderful horticulture event in Europe, and it only comes around once every 10 years. So I'm going to try to put a group together for that, for any people that are into horticulture, gardening. It's a spectacular event as well. But any ideas you have like that, bring to me, and it'd be wonderful.
Perfect. By chance, are there any questions, Becky, on anything?
And if any of you have any questions, there's a chat pod, so feel free.
Otherwise, we know that you know how to get a hold of Becky. And if you may have missed anything, or even if you have any further questions, Becky always records these and she shares them out afterwards. So, you know, be on the lookout for that as well. But again, just so grateful that you guys joined us, and hopefully it's inspired you a bit, or at least allowed you an opportunity to learn some more about different things and maybe put it on your list for some time down the road. And Becky, thank you so much for allowing me this time with you and taking some time to put these together. I appreciate it.
Perfect. I appreciate your time. Thank you for helping me with this as well. And thank all of you for taking your time to out of your day to join us. And I look forward to seeing you in a couple of weeks.
Very good. All right.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Okay, have a good afternoon. Thank you, everybody. Bye-bye.